Madam Chief Justice, thank you very much for talking to us. We appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure.
Well, to start, talk about the FCRB. Why was it established in the first place?
Well, it was established in 1978, and it was in response to this phenomenon that we had more and more children being dumped into foster care, and we found that once they got there, they just kind of languished there. So Arizona was on that first wave of states to take affirmative action to deal with this problem.
And what's the role of the FCRB in the judicial branch?
Well, the Foster Care Review Board reviews the case of each and every child in our system at least once every 6 months. They have meetings at which the child, the foster parent, well, the child if the child is at least 12 years old, the foster parents, the biological parents if they care to show up, and caregiving professionals show up before the board, and they review several aspects of each child's case. The board has several functions. They look at the adequacy of the efforts being made and the progress being made toward getting that child in a permanent placement. The board also makes recommendations to the legislature and to the governor, and it encourages and helps facilitate, if it's the appropriate thing to do and in the best interests of the child, putting that child back into his own family.
Now, what role does the FCRB play in the child welfare process?
You know, as a matter of statute, it plays a role of reviewing dependency cases, that is, cases where children are taken out of their homes because they're being abused or neglected. It also has a role in determining when children should be removed from specific foster placements and in making a determination as to whether children have been properly removed by Child Protective Services where the department believes that they're being abused and neglected. As a practical matter, I think the FCRB's most important role is maintaining the integrity of the system. We deal in tremendously emotional, difficult cases. Parents are obviously very upset when their children are taken away. We're worried about children being abused and neglected. We want them to be treated properly. And we want the state of Arizona, when it decides that it needs to take a child away, to provide appropriate services to try to reunify children or to get children back in permanent placements just as quickly as possible, because we all recognize that they shouldn't languish in the system. And what the FCRB does is try to keep that system honest, to make sure that CPS is providing the services that it ought to be providing, to make sure that the behavioral health system is providing the services that it should be providing, to make sure that the court system is acting in an appropriate fashion as quickly as it should be to move these cases along, and to make sure that parents are being treated fairly. So that what the FCRB does is keep the system honest.
The impacts are dramatic. Each case then gets reviewed by an independent group. There's another group there then that doesn't exist in some jurisdictions to help ensure that the children get the services that they need and that they're moved toward a permanent placement.
Now, other states have an in-house administrative review of their CPS cases and such, but Arizona uses citizens to perform those reviews. Why do you see that as preferable? Well,
our legislature decided wisely, I think, that it's best to have an independent review. In a lot of other jurisdictions, they have kind of a fox watching the hen house situation where they have one part of an agency reviewing the actions of another part of an agency. We like to think that our system is one where the overseer and the overseen aren't accountable to the same authority. It provides additional checks and balances and I think a little bit of independence.
What the FCRB does is hold a meeting. It invites all of the people in the case to come in and talk about what's going on in the case, and then it provides a report to the court. And it tells me, is the department, is CPS making reasonable efforts towards reunification? Are parents getting the services they ought to be getting? Is the system doing what it's supposed to be doing to move the case along? And so the impact is that it provides me that information. I read those reports and I act on those reports. In Yavapai County, every time I schedule a report and review hearing, the FCRB tries to hold one of those meetings so that it can give me current information as to what's going on in the case to help me make better decisions in those cases. I frequently ask various participants in the system, CPS or the behavioral health system, to respond to those recommendations. Tell me, they've said that you're doing the following or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Explain to me what's going on here. they give me insight as to what the various roles are, as to whether a parent is making active efforts to try and do the things that they have to do to fix the problems which cause a child to be removed. They tell me whether children are doing well in the educational system, whether they're getting what they need in school, for instance, whether they're getting the therapy they need. And that helps me enter orders to make the system work better.
People should volunteer to do any kind of public service for a lot of good reasons. It's good for the soul and it's good for society. In the case of Foster Review Board, it's good for the children as well. In Arizona, because the statutes require that we have a foster care review board for every 100 children who are in foster care, statewide, we have 101 review boards. That requires the services of a lot of caring volunteers. And our volunteers find that they get a lot of reward from this kind of service. And I've been told by our employees that help staff, and by the way, to have that many volunteers out serving the interests of Arizona children, we have 30 full-time staffers and 5 part-time staffers. It's a huge entity, and there's a huge commitment of volunteer effort. But I'm told by our staffers that we're down 16%. So we need a lot of people throughout the state to staff all of these positions. I was just glancing down at my notes, and I see that we have just over 5,500 cases pending, and those cases involve the welfare of more than 9,000 children. That's a lot of children in foster care. We need to get those children either returned to their families in a safe setting or get them placed in a situation where they can get into permanent homes and get on with their lives, be allowed to be children, be allowed to be educated.
Now, what do you think it takes to be an effective FCRB volunteer? Because that's what all this is about, is the volunteers for that board.
I think the most important thing is a willingness to be involved in the system, to try and make it work better, to want to make lives better for children and families in the state of Arizona. It certainly takes a person that's willing to give of their time. It takes a person who is willing to take the time it requires to understand how all these systems work. And there's a pretty steep learning curve for that. But I think primarily it takes somebody who wants to see the lives of children and families in Arizona be better.